Ethan Walker was once one of the top AI engineers at Google. At 32, he had everything the tech world dreamed of: a spacious office overlooking the San Francisco Bay, a seven-figure salary, and a reputation as a golden mind in data security. But behind the glittering facade lay a persistent emptiness. Years spent in endless meetings and writing code to serve ads and revenue made Ethan wonder, what am I really protecting? And for whom? Then one day, he received a call from an old friend, now the CEO of a fledgling startup in Austin, Texas, NeuroSync Labs. They didn't have a huge budget, no flashy headquarters, but they had a vision Ethan couldn't look away from: building an AI system capable of protecting user privacy right at the data core, not just detecting leaks, but stopping bad actors the moment they touched the data. Ethan nodded, not for the money, but for the chance to build something truly meaningful from scratch. He left Google, packed up everything into his car, and drove straight south, not knowing what awaited, only knowing that, for the first time, he felt like he was heading in the right direction. Nearly 2 years had passed since Ethan left Google to start over at NeuroSync Labs. Gone were the Silicon Valley-style meetings and sleek offices with free coffee. In their place, sleepless nights by the whiteboard, thousands of lines of code, and countless near failures. But Ethan never once regretted it. He believed in what they were building: Sentinel AI, a system capable of instantly detecting unauthorized access to data and stopping it at the point of intrusion, without any manual intervention. Then the moment arrived. After months of fine-tuning the model and running security tests, Sentinel AI was finally stable enough to showcase to major investors. Ethan felt like a father about to introduce his brainchild to the world. The night before the demo, he stayed late at the office, triple-checking algorithms and highlighting key talking points for the presentation. The next morning, he received an urgent email from CEO Mark Reynolds, requesting his presence in the meeting room, along with the company's legal counsel. Thinking it was just a final prep session before launch, Ethan walked in with a confident smile. But it wasn't. Mark sat across the table, face expressionless, not a hint of a smile. The lawyer began reading aloud the terms of Ethan's employment contract. Every invention, product, and initiative developed during his time at NeuroSync Labs was fully owned by the company. Then, like a punch to the chest, came the blow. Ethan was to receive an innovation bonus of $50,000, and his contract would be terminated immediately. No demo, no thank you, no room for negotiation. Ethan was speechless. His heart pounded in his chest. Everything he had given, the sleepless nights, the passionate lines of code, a piece of his very self, was now boxed up, stamped company property, and ripped away without mercy. Mark said just one thing as Ethan turned to leave. "Thank you, Ethan. Sentinel wouldn't exist without you. But you know how the game works." Ethan walked out, but not with his head down, because inside him a new plan was already taking shape. Ethan stepped out of NeuroSync Labs headquarters. The Texas sun blazed behind him, but inside, he felt ice cold. He had seen this coming, or at least part of it. Mark's betrayal didn't take him entirely by surprise. Months ago, Ethan had started noticing strange anomalies in the system, quiet changes in access permissions, lines of code he didn't write being committed to the core using his credentials. Too clean, too deliberate. And Mark, once a passionate founder, had grown distant, secretive, constantly locked in private meetings with lawyers and financial advisors. Ethan didn't say a word, but he didn't stand still either. As a veteran in cybersecurity, he knew Sentinel inside and out, and more importantly, he knew exactly what someone like Mark would do to claim the technology as his own. That's why, silently, Ethan had built Sentinel Phantom, an anonymous, standalone module, completely detached from the main system and absent from any internal documentation. It had a single mission: to quietly monitor the parent system and activate only under specific betrayals, like revoking Ethan's access or repurposing Sentinel in ways not outlined in the original codebase. And sure enough, Less than 24 hours after his termination, Ethan received a notification from Phantom itself. Sentinel AI had been accessed by a new internal IP address, a server never listed in any of the test environments. Worse yet, the AI was being restructured for commercialization, packaged as a high-end security product to be sold to government agencies. Phantom immediately initiated its protocol, encrypting key sections of the core algorithm, injecting performance-disrupting variables, and most importantly, sending a full source code backup to Ethan's private repository, complete with documented proof of authorship and version history. Ethan stared at the screen, not with rage, but calm resolve. "Sorry, Mark," he whispered. "I didn't build Sentinel to be a tool for dirty money, and I'm not dumb enough to hand it over without keeping the keys. This wasn't just payback. This was the beginning of something much bigger." The following week, NeuroSync Labs hosted a major pitch event at the headquarters of Orion Ventures, a top venture capital firm in New York. It was the event Mark had been meticulously preparing for, not just to raise $50 million, but to prove that the company could thrive without Ethan. The conference room was outfitted with massive screens, live-streaming Sentinel AI in action. Investors watched with eager anticipation. Mark began his presentation like a man already victorious, highlighting processing speeds, detection rates, and potential federal contracts. Then came the live demo, the crown jewel of the pitch. Mark confidently typed in a command to simulate a cyber attack, expecting Sentinel to respond in real time, just as it always had. But this time, nothing happened. The screen suddenly went black. A sharp beep pierced the room. Then, in bold red text, a message appeared. "Unauthorized deployment detected. System lockdown initiated." The room fell into dead silence. Some investors exchanged puzzled glances. Others quietly packed their folders. 10 minutes later, more than half the seats were empty. Mark stood frozen, sweat pouring down his face. Panicked, he pulled out his phone and dialed Ethan. Back in Austin, Ethan answered the late-night call. His voice was calm, almost casual, like greeting an old acquaintance. "Hey Mark, something wrong with Sentinel?" Mark tried to steady his voice, but it trembled. "Ethan, listen. I need you to come back. Help me unlock the system. No one knows it like you do. Whatever you want. Just name it." Ethan paused. Then, with quiet authority, he replied, "I want 4 things, Mark. 1. Recognition as co-founder of Sentinel AI. 2. 50% intellectual property rights to the entire model. 3. A seat on the board. And for $2 million in compensation for the value I created and the betrayal I endured." Mark was speechless. Ethan continued, his voice steady but sharp as steel. "If not, I'll release every document, proof of source code misuse, illegal access revocations, and shady contracts. The press, the SEC, and your investors will all wake up to a very interesting email tomorrow." Silence. 30 seconds ticked by like hours. Finally, Mark exhaled, defeated. "Send me the contract." Ethan smiled and ended the call. This time, he was the one in control of the game. Less than a week after that fateful phone call, Ethan boarded the first flight to New York, stepping into the NeuroSync Labs office, not as a former employee, but as co-founder, major shareholder, and the new chief technology officer. Mark had no choice but to concede, signing every condition Ethan demanded, not just because he had lost a major funding round, but because the entire company had come dangerously close to collapse if the internal scandal had gone public. With Ethan officially back in the leadership team, investor confidence began to recover. Within just 3 months, NeuroSync Labs didn't just bounce back. It exceeded growth expectations, attracting fresh capital from both Silicon Valley and European venture funds. Under Ethan's direct leadership, Sentinel AI underwent continuous upgrades, not only enhancing its cybersecurity capabilities, but expanding into medical and financial applications. Major hospitals began using the system to protect electronic medical records. Banks and investment firms adopted Sentinel to detect unauthorized access and security vulnerabilities. Despite the rapid success, Ethan never forgot why he left in the first place: injustice, abuse of power, and a lack of transparency. So this time, he set the rules on day one. We build technology to protect people, and the company must protect the people who build it. Under Ethan's guidance, the company culture shifted dramatically. Performance reviews became transparent and democratized. Access to source code and technical documents was meticulously logged and clearly permissioned. Employees were encouraged to speak up about wrongdoing without fear of retaliation. Ethan even empowered a team of young engineers to form an internal tech council, where anyone could propose product improvements without navigating a tangled management hierarchy. Mark, still CEO, began to change as well. Maybe it was out of reluctant respect for Ethan. More importantly, he had learned a costly lesson. You can't build the future by standing on someone else's work and calling it your own. Ethan had won. Not just because he reclaimed what was rightfully his, but because he had prepared with patience, waited for the right moment, and returned with unwavering integrity. It wasn't a loud victory, but it was undeniable. In the end, Ethan didn't just reclaim what was rightfully his, he redefined the game. When he returned as co-founder and CTO, many thought Ethan simply wanted revenge. But in truth, he had been preparing for that moment since before he left. Every line of code was archived. Every email, technical document, and conversation, Ethan had kept the evidence. Not to hurt anyone, but to protect himself. The difference wasn't that Ethan fought for fairness. It was how he fought for it. No destruction. No emotional retaliation. He came back with strategy, composure, and an unshakable belief in his own worth. A few months later, at a major tech and startup event at MIT, Ethan was invited to share his story. He stepped onto the stage. No slides, no dramatic storytelling. He said just one sentence that brought the entire room to silence. What would you have done if your life's work got stolen in a blink? Walk away? Or walk back in with a plan? He paused, then looked out over the rows of young engineers, founders, final-year students dreaming of their first startup, and continued, "Protect what you build. Your ideas, your vision, and your worth. Don't let anyone write your story but you." A wave of applause followed. But Ethan didn't smile. He simply nodded, as if sending a message louder than any speech could deliver. Self-respect doesn't come from fame. It comes from standing up for what you believe is right. Not long after, a wave of young tech companies began revisiting their internal policies, redefining intellectual property rights, and building a culture of transparency, all using Ethan's story as a living example. He didn't just change one company. He changed how justice is seen in the world of startups. And sometimes, it all begins when you dare to walk back in with a plan.